Hey, this is Chip. Hey, Ricky Carr is one of those Erie musicians who a lot of people know. They may know him as a drummer from the 1970s through the 1990s, or they may have encountered him when he was managing bands or coordinating local benefits or even hiring the musical acts for Harborfest, because he used to do that too. He's my first guest who has played country and who was in an oldies band. One thing I should note is there's a high-pitched sound that you hear occasionally throughout this episode, and that I reference early in the episode, actually. That's Ricky's hearing aid interacting with the mics and everything, so no big deal, but just wanted to point out that that's what that sound is. Ricky's a great guy, and I'm really glad to have got to know him, and I'm excited for you to hear his stories because he's got plenty of them. So let's get to episode 6 featuring Ricky Carr. All right. Ricky Carr, welcome to the podcast, and thank you for being here with us today. Do I hear some weird noises? No.
Not at all, but thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks. Still getting used to this studio myself. So right off the bat, I need to ask, so you're really the first country drummer or even country player that I've had on the podcast so far, but I know that you've done so much more than that. But you sent me some stuff at the beginning saying, hey, when I started out, I played with an Elvis impersonator. Is that right?
Oh boy, yes I did, and he has a history behind that. Now that was before I did my country thing.
Yeah,
did my country thing after my Army days. I've never played country music before in my life.
Right. So this is all pre you going in the Army in 72, right?
72 to 75.
Thank you for your service. That was awesome. And so were you a drummer? First of all, let's start. Where'd you grow up? Here in Erie?
Grew up here in Erie and Mill Creek, went to McDowell and that. And my very first band we had a band, don't even remember the name of it, but it was in high school, probably around 68.
Okay.
Right around 67. And it was with my very first guitar player, which is Randy Detzel. He's chief of police of Vernon Township.
Okay.
And long story short, he stopped playing for about 30 years, and then he wanted to come back and play. And
wow! And
we connected because I own a Corvette, and I went in a Corvette club, and there was Randy. He just joined the thing there, so we reminisced.
Gotcha.
I said, Randy says, "I want to get back playing." I says, "Well, let me help you out."
Huh.
And that's how the Greyhounds were. They're still playing today. Yeah. And this had to be about 10 years ago when he got a few guys. He's just jamming with Bob Casey and a few of the guys at the Elks Club. They would just have, and my uncle Tommy Carr.
Sure.
Used to own Tommy's Whiskey River.
Okay.
Used to be Farmer's Tavern. So you country people that are listening out there,
that was a big place. Yeah.
They do. I love my country days and my rock and roll days. But
who were the other guys that you played with at McDowell? Do you remember the name of the band?
I don't remember the band.
Yeah.
But all I do know is Randy Detzel used to walk to his house. I lived at 12th and Marshall.
Okay. Yeah.
And he used to walk over the bridge on Peninsula, and he lived on 23rd off of Peninsula.
Yeah.
He had a trailer. Yeah, he had a trailer, and we practiced inside his trailer.
Okay.
And the only gig we really played at is my family would have a 4th of July picnic in the backyard.
Yeah.
And in Mill Creek. And we played back there. He would know the keyboard player name. I don't even know. We really didn't play out.
Would you have guitar, keyboards, drums?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah,
right. Cool.
And I remember one of my cousins, Warren Leone, he just passed last year.
That's right.
Part of family picnics and that, he would come. I remember having him sit in and on a couple songs in drums. Like in the family, we were the two musicians in the family.
Gotcha.
But we started out in the 60s. My brother Michael Reed picked up bass guitar. My brother Billy Kirkpatrick picked up regular guitar, and I was doing drums. And what kept me going for drums is my father would say, this will pass.
You'll get over this.
Well, it lasted so long, my brothers dropped out But my encouragement was every time I'd be practicing my drums, my father would just open the door. Can you give those drums a rest? Because this is going to be so temporary.
Right.
Well, you know what? In my mind, I had to prove him wrong. And he ended up proud of me, years later when he would come see me if we're a headline at Harbor Fest or whatever. But he loved it after that. I would get up in the morning. My mother would yell upstairs, okay, time to get up, and they'd go to work. So instead of eating breakfast at 7 in the morning, I had my drum set up in the room, and I'd have speakers on either side of my head, whether it's the Beatles
That's what I was going to ask. What were you playing?
Yeah, Beatles, Rolling Stones, what was going on in the 60s at that time.
Right.
And I would play for a half hour, then go to the bus stop and
there were a lot of, at least I've interviewed a few guys from that time period who went to McDowell that were playing back then. It seems like
Paul Gall.
Oh yeah, right, Paul Gall. Yeah,
one of the best bass players Mill Creek had, and these guys were playing at the high school dance. Paul Gall, Steve McConnell.
Oh right.
Now, how I met Steve McConnell is my best friends were the Forest Park Honda, the Millers.
Okay.
And every year in May they would go fishing in Canada. And a group of us would go. We'd even be able to skip school a couple days.
Okay.
And we were in Canada, and I met Steve McConnell. He didn't know I was a drummer. I didn't know he was a drummer. It was like years later when I was at Waldemere, and the band was playing, and it was Steve McConnell's band. And they're doing Jethro Tull, and he's doing it note for note.
This is before the Snowmen.
Yes.
Yeah,
way before the Snowmen.
Right, yeah.
And boy, he impressed me.
Yeah.
Like the reason I picked drums, I thought the girls liked drummers.
Wow, I've never heard that. It's always
I know I should have been the singer.
Absolutely, it's always the singer.
And the guitar player that's up front. Right. Us drummers are in the back.
I'm a bass player. I know that it's the same thing. Yeah,
well,
I gotcha.
That was one of the instruments. It was either going to be drums or bass playing.
Yeah.
I figured the girls love drummers more than they love the bass player, so I went that way. Little did I know.
That's right. So you then, after high school, you go right into the service? Or you wait a little bit?
No. After high school, I applied at GE. This was in 1970.
Okay.
Graduated in 70 from McDowell. And got hired right away at GE. And I was waiting for my friend Ron Huya he graduated in 72.
Okay.
So we joined Airborne. We wanted to be paratroopers.
Wow.
And we joined at the same time in 72. I end up I asked to be stationed in Hawaii, and the Army's wisdom, let's put them in Germany. Right after airborne school. And they to a place called Baumholder, Germany.
Right.
What is that? They call it the Rock or whatever, but all right, am I going to keep my sanity here? Luckily, I'm a drummer or whatever. You go to in the day room of the barracks, or in a separate building or whatever, they had instruments in that. So I can jam on the drums here, and someone else would jam on the guitar. And so we formed a band called People's Choice.
Huh.
And then I think we were approached and says, hey, how would you guys like to play in the EM clubs, the officers clubs, and stuff like that? And this is in 74.
What's EM?
EM, Enlisted Men's Club.
Enlisted Men's Club.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
And
you're just doing this on the side.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But they said, we'll pay you guys about $60, $70 per person. You're talking 1974
that's
now.
a lot back then.
Geez, I took I deducted on pay when I came back home and played.
I bet, yeah.
But here's the thing. You don't get paid for 30 days. It's the Army, you got to go through paperwork and stuff like that. But not doing it really for the money. I mean, we're having so much fun.
Sure.
And then I got in a band called Headstone, and there was 4 of us. And the bass player, I remember he was a black guy. I said, where'd you start playing it? He says he started with the Allman Brothers before they were famous. But boy, he can play the bass. And the keyboard player, I wish I could. We called him Jam, the bass player. I can't remember the keyboard player, but he had the Hammond and he had the horns going.
Yeah.
We were like a tribute band for Santana.
Oh,
and
wow.
we can play note for note every Santana song there was. Our guitar player, he was a 16-year-old dependent from from one of the Army and that.
Yeah, right.
And he can play just like Carlos Santana.
Wow.
And I remember playing in Frankfurt in a 2-day outdoor concert in an arena, 100,000 people. It's like Heinz Field.
Yeah, right.
And let's see, the artists there were Sly and the Family Stone, Chuck Berry, Rod Stewart.
So they were all on the bill too.
Yeah, they were on the bill,
Wow.
but we were the
Like an opening act, or
one of the but we were well known locally as far as the clubs, and we played some of the German clubs and we were very good.
Yeah.
At that, and that's memorable.
Wow. Yeah.
And I was trying to find some pictures of that, but I couldn't.
Did those guys ever? Did you ever stay in touch with those guys?
Not really.
No.
Then the second bass player that came off, Jam left, and we got another. And he says he just calls himself the Kid. I said, "Where did you play?" He says, "Raspberries."
Huh.
I says, "Raspberries from Cleveland?"
Yeah.
He says, "Yeah." So I want to give him a little test because I'm skeptic, anyways. You know.
Yeah.
I says, "Okay, where'd you play in Erie, PA, in the early '70s, like '70?" Right away, he says, "Hullabaloo."
Wow.
All right, now you got my
legit.
attention. You just passed the test.
Yeah.
And well, I wish I could remember his name, but he's no bigger than I was. I'm about 5'6".
Yeah.
140 some pounds, and he was small in that.
And at the time, you are early 20s, or
Yeah, when I went in the Army, I was 20,
Oh, okay.
23 when I got out of the Army. I was born in 52, and I asked some questions like, wow. And at that time, Raspberries was a household name.
absolutely. Yeah.
And he said when he was in high school, he used to sit in class and the radio be on, and he says it's really weird when you're listening to your own song. I said, well, all right, my next question, what are you doing in the Army?
Yeah.
Sad story. He was in a car accident, not a car accident, but he hit a kid or something that died or whatever, and I don't out of guilt or whatever, he joined the service. But
Gotcha.
But I was.
Did he continue on playing, or do you know whatever happened to him? Or
No, he played with us for a while. I mean,
And then after
he was
that?
a bass player.
Yeah.
Yeah. What he's doing now, I don't know, but I understand Raspberries. Look them up on the internet. They're still, I think, going
They are.
strong. I believe. Or now
Yeah.
whether he's part of that, I don't know.
What was his name? Do you remember?
No, that's just it. I just knew him
Yeah.
as the Kid.
The Kid. All right. I don't know where we're getting that feedback from.
That's from my hearing aids.
Oh, it is? Okay. All right. Sorry
Let me
about
turn
that.
No, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah. I thought that was... So, 75, 76, you are out of the Army.
Okay, got out of the Army in 75. Now,
Come back to Erie?
yes.
Okay. Right.
Before I was in the Army in 72,
Oh, yeah, we gotta talk
I forgot about
Elvis.
that. Erie Thunderbird, Drum and Bugle Corps.
Yep. All right.
And loved Drum and Bugle Corps. The reason why I wanted to be a drummer is, like I said, I lived at 12th and Marshall, and the 4th of July parade would form right out in front of the house, and watching the bands go, and the drummers always got me. So I want to be in the drum line. So I was in the McDowell Marching Band.
Okay.
for
Which
a
was
while.
huge at the time.
Right? Ralph Perkins, I'm sure
Right. Oh,
some
yeah.
people there would know that
Yep.
name. And high school is done. Now I'm waiting for Ron to graduate so we can go in the Army together. So I'll be going to Erie Thunderbirds.
Yeah.
And there's still guys to this day. I'm on the board of directors of Erie Thunderbirds.
Right. I was going to say, you've been involved with them a long time.
Joe Celerino, one of the best drummers
Great drummer.
and percussionists in Erie.
Yeah.
He was in the snare line. That was in 72. And me and Dale Myers, we were in the cymbal line.
Wow. That's some
Dale's
heavy-
another
great
name
drummers.
that
Yeah.
I know that I got him started.
Right.
I'll come to that.
Yeah, right. There's a point where you...
I'll
you
come to where
introduce
Dale
right.
comes in. Yeah.
Yep.
I got a ton of names for you.
Well, where does Elvis come in?
Elvis. Oh, I'm glad you remind me. That's in the early 70s before the service. John Ferraro.
Okay.
They called him Johnny C.
All right.
He says, and I met him, I think at Penny's or say he worked at Penny's. He says, "Hey, I'm looking for a drummer." All right. So I was set up in his basement, and all we're practicing is Elvis.
And did you know of him at the time?
No.
Okay. All right.
No. And after a while, I says, "John, this ain't going to work. I want to play a variety."
Right.
You know, this ain't going to work in Erie. And this is before he made it, pretty good in Erie.
So he was like the first real Elvis impersonator back then?
Right, because come around 77 or whatever, I remember they were playing at Anthony's. And but anyways, getting back to that, and we became friends.
Yeah.
And there's a story of John that will come later into this.
Right.
I'm trying to keep it in.
So you play with an Elvis impersonator. Did you guys play out then?
No, but I remember practicing. It's like 13th or 14th Peninsula. I think it was called Yogi's.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
That's right.
But the place was really been shut down for a while. So we set up there. And for a while, I think we had about, I'd say about 8-piece band or whatever.
Oh, wow.
And I remember Sam Servideo, that name comes to, I think he played saxophone or something like that. He, and we only practiced a couple times, but we really didn't play out.
Didn't play out, okay.
I got distracted doing other stuff, and they ended up, moving on.
And then you went into service.
Then I went into service after the Thunderbirds in 72.
Okay.
Yeah, the summer of 72, I was in the Thunderbirds. In September of 72, I went in the Army.
Okay. All right. So when you come back, you go back into the Thunderbirds?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I got back in September of 75.
Right.
Got out.
Okay.
Right away, going to Thunderbird. Now, I was a cymbal player in the Thunderbirds in 72, but you can only do cymbals for so much. I want something more challenging.
Yeah.
And I tried out for the timpani line.
Okay.
And what's impressive with the timpani line, back then, we had marching timps. You actually had it strapped on, and there's 4 of us in front, and we lead the whole drum corps.
Oh, okay.
And it's just like the bass drummers or whatever. Each one has their part.
Yeah.
And there's no room for air.
Gotcha.
And our instructor was Gus, he's a professor at Edinburgh. Yes, there's no room for air in front of Gus, because he'll literally kick you in the butt.
So in the Army, you're playing in this band that's playing Santana, and I imagine just the rock of the time. You come back out, you're playing in a marching band. Was there a desire to say, I'm going to get into another band like I was in the Army? Okay,
in 76, all summer of 76, played with the Thunderbirds, and we actually went DCA championships in Rochester, New York.
Oh.
And the Thunderbirds, we came in 8th place. This is amongst the world now. This is the highest the Thunderbirds ever achieved.
Okay.
And that was pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
But then it's time to play in a band. So right around September of 76, I was done with Drum and Bugle Corps. And this band is Rick, I think it was Johnny C. that introduced me to Jerry Tubbs.
Oh, yeah.
And he had a band, Jerry Tubbs, a little bit in Nashville.
Right.
So it's country. Wow, that's okay. This should be easy. I can play rock and roll, so
So you weren't a country fan at the time.
Not really.
Okay.
I couldn't stand it.
That would be not really, for sure, if you can't stand it. Yeah.
I didn't dislike it.
Yeah.
But, okay, let me check out this band, Jerry Tubbs, a little bit. Nashville. And it was Jerry Tubbs, Dan Freely, who just blew me away playing fiddle.
Okay.
He had to be the top fiddle player in Erie. I think he still is.
And they had been playing already.
I believe so, but they needed a drummer, so now I had to learn how to do a hoedown beat or whatever.
Right.
And I would listen to tapes and stuff. Okay, I can do this. So I was playing with them. I remember guitar player Louis Nadeau, and then it came on later was one of the best guitar players Erie has is Billy Arnold.
Yeah. Sure.
I
yeah.
mean, he's a monster.
He's in Florida now?
Yes, he is.
Right,
And he's on my Facebook, and we keep in touch. And
Yep.
later on, we got in another band. I'll come to that at the time. But Jerry Tubbs lasted till, I think, New Year's Eve. We played.
Did you play at a prison with Jerry Tubbs?
No, but I did hear that he did probably play the prison.
I saw that in some of the research that I did, and I thought, boy, I wonder what that was like. Yeah.
But to me, Jerry Tubbs was like he's like a Nashville artist that's living in Erie.
Yeah.
You know, so he was pretty big at that time.
He was, yeah.
So I went from him to Billy Thunder and the Thunderbolt.
Right.
Now, there's another guy, put a cowboy hat on him, and he's right out of Nashville or whatever. And,
Right.
you know, we'd play some of these fairs like Albion Fair or something like that, coming off the stage, and people were there wanting your autograph.
Yeah.
So wait a minute, I never signed an autograph in my life, but all of a sudden I'm big time. I remember playing at Waterford Fair, and they put us on the stage. Same thing.
Yeah.
You play these fairs. I said, well, there's something to this country thing.
And were you the original drummer? Like, was it?
For Billy Thunder?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
No.
I went from Jerry Tubbs to Billy Thunder for about 2 years. I got married in '78, so I was in Billy Thunder's band at that time.
And Linda Lee was.
Linda Lee, she's
was already the bass
She's
player.
actually like a third cousin of mine.
Oh, jeez.
She's a bass player, and her voice, oh my God!
Everybody loved her.
And she's still
plays.
singing, because
she?
later on in our story, I'll come up to which I had a benefit just this past was it October that I organized.
That's fine.
And there was Linda Lee. There's all the people, all the country people that I know. They're wonderful people, and so in Billy Thunder's band, they started this thing. It was 78, 79 or whatever. Brian Lee, I didn't know the guy at the time, but he came and he said, we want to start a Tri-State Country and Music Bluegrass Association. That's the name of the organization.
Yeah, right.
And it started about 79. What we're going to do is we have the country bands play, and we'll play at Rainbow Gardens or whatever, and all money will go to charity. And my country people, that's what they love to do.
Oh, okay.
They give. And
This was, what did you say, 77, 80?
79,
Oh, 79.
I would say,
Okay.
about
All right.
79, 80. So Brian Lee was voted in as president, and I was in the board of directors at the time. And during that year, he wanted to make it a competition. You know, just like the big-time country, you know, when they have the awards and stuff like that.
Right.
Well, I came in second place in drums because I moved to Bob Casey's band, and the guy I got the job to take my place in Billy Thunder's band is Dale Myers.
Dale Myers. And he came in first?
Dale's just a kid, and we're in the Thunderbirds together. And I says, Dale, it costs us money to play in the Thunderbirds. It's time for you to make money.
Yeah, right.
So why don't you come to John? We were playing at Jonathan's at the time.
Where was Jonathan's?
Jonathan's is rock and roll right now.
Oh, right. Okay, I remember the name.
And because I want to play with Bob Casey.
Who's another...
Right, who
long-time
started a
country?
band called Sarge. John Knox was guitar player.
Oh.
Harry Vogel was our keyboard player, and it was more rock than it was country.
Okay.
And I wanted to, move in that direction.
Sure.
And Dale Myers, I had to teach him how to do a hold down beat.
Because he had only been playing in the Thunderbirds before?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
all. That's all he
Gotcha.
played was at the time. Matter of fact, he wasn't even old enough to be in the bars.
Oh, was he?
At the time, and so I had him sit in because I had to introduce the band to him. I said, "Hey, here's the guy I'd like to take my play." Well, we got to hear him play. All right, come on up, Dale. Play
Right.
a couple numbers, and he was nervous. And well, if you know Dale, he's fantastic percussionist and a drummer.
Yeah.
To this day, he's still playing snare with the Thunderbirds drum line.
Gotcha. Okay.
And he's like one of my best friends.
So he ended up beating you in that
No, it
competition?
wasn't in the competition.
In the competition.
Yeah,
Right.
when they gave out awards.
Yeah. That's
At
funny.
the time, I went from Bob Casey's band to a band called Country Legend,
Yeah.
and they were already established at that time. We won that year, best band,
Oh, okay.
best country, And I didn't know these guys, Ron Heater, Bob Heater, Jim Bepko, but we called his stage name was Jim Ryan. He was a steel guitar player, one of the best in Erie.
Country legend.
Yeah, and they played the different clubs like Pappy's Place in Wattsburg. And
what were some of the other places that you played? Even back.
I'm going to tell you right now, my favorite place at that time, country, was Farmer's Tavern.
I've heard so much about it. Yeah, over the years.
Later, it was called Tommy's Whiskey River out in Route 98.
I was going to say
at Franklin Center.
Right.
And you had in wintertime, snowmobiles. It'd
right,
be packed
it was a big
with
snowmobile place.
But you had to make reservations by Wednesday because every table was reserved at Farmer's Tavern. And the way it was set up was really didn't have a stage. It's like people were sitting behind you, beside you, and all around. The ambiance of Farmer's Tavern was bar none the best. And there's Ronnie Farmer and Cindy Farmer.
Okay.
And country people remember Ronnie Farmer.
And was it a weekend gig always?
It was a weekend. It was a Friday, Saturday night. Okay. But they would get the top country bands. Best Western was going good at that time, too, and top country. And I got to play at Best Western a few times.
Yeah, those are the ones I always think of. Were there other ones that were popular back then just for country or no?
Country, Casey versus Casey.
Right.
Dick Casey, Denny Casey, and Bob Casey. The first time I ever heard them, I was still with Jerry Tubbs a little bit in Nashville. They played at a place, and I can't remember the bar, but it was by 12th and Parade, and it sat in the back a little bit.
Okay.
And he said, you got to hear this band. It was a Thursday night, so, back then bands played Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night.
Right.
Okay, let me go check these guys out. The harmonies of the Casey brothers was unbelievable. They had such a chemistry.
Yeah.
And so that was impressive.
Yeah.
And I'm just getting to know these country people.
Right.
By the time I was with Tri-State Country Association. Well, anyways, getting back to that, I know we keep jumping.
That's all right. Yeah, I was curious about the different places because I had the Cubby Hole Lounge on there, and I had I think that Papa Nick's was on there for a little while. And
the Cubby Hole Lounge, I think that's the place near 12th and where Casey versus Casey.
Yeah, I remember.
It
was on 340 East 12th Street. Yeah,
that's it. That's what I was talking about where I first saw Casey versus Casey.
Interesting. Okay, so we're back to the Bluegrass Association.
Yeah,
right?
Back to that, and for the year, and a couple of musicians, and I felt like they did. We're supposed to be a brotherhood. This is pitting, even though I was second place and our band was first and stuff like that. I want to get rid of this competition thing. Yeah. This was all Brian Lee's thing. He wanted, and I understood where he was coming from. He wanted to be like the show on TV,
right? Exactly.
The Country Music Awards or whatever. I still have my trophy at home.
Oh, cool.
But I said, no, we need to be a brotherhood if this is, we're going to get money for charity.
Yeah.
So I ran for president. And I ran at that time, people were coming to the meetings. It's like about 40, 50 of us.
Oh, geez.
And one guy showed up late, and they were voting for, I'm running against Brian Lee. And guy comes in late, Jim Turner. I won by one vote.
Oh, geez.
It was Jim Turner's vote.
Huh.
And, okay, that's cool. The first order of business, get rid of this competition. We're going to have, we got special liquor licenses. We're going to have 5 jamborees at Rainbow Gardens, which at the time, that cost $1,800 to rent that place.
Oh, wait, 5 jamborees in 1 year?
In 1 year.
Oh, crap. Okay. All right.
And we would get... we get about 8 bands, country bands. Country bands wanted to play for us. WLKK Radio.
That was big.
Paul Wickles.
Yeah.
Made him one of our officers. We had 14 officers. I was president, and I had all these officers. You had Paul Wickles. And WLKK would actually broadcast the jamborees live.
Okay.
Every band.
Holy cow.
And it was really big
Yeah.
at the time. And when I became president, I would have 2 officers for each. We'd have liquor control. That just their job. Two officers handle liquor control.
Gotcha.
2 officers handle the bands. Get the bands and scheduling. There's
Right,
all
everybody
sorts
had
of
their-
things to do, but
Absolutely.
it was like Rainbow Gardens became our big bar.
Yeah, I mean, was that that had to have taken up a lot of time for the association? I mean, if you're putting
We
on
had
5 of
meetings
those-
every month. Every month we
Wow.
would have a meeting. I can't even remember the time. That lasted into the 90s.
That's what I was going to ask. How long did that go on?
Yeah,
So
it
that
went
was-
from 1979 to actually in the 90s, and it's funny when I ran against Brian Lee, and he was a little upset because he really wanted that thing, so he ran against me the following year. And I think the vote was I got 45, he got 1 vote.
Okay, so
It was apparent his own wife even voted for me.
okay,
Just wanted to add that in there. But
Gotcha.
I like Brian. I didn't really know him as a musician. Didn't really
so
see
Linda
his
was
band.
his wife.
No.
Oh no, it was-
Linda Lee was Billy Thunder's wife.
oh that's right. Yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah, Billy
All
and Linda.
right. Okay, all right.
And her voice, and she still has that voice. Blue Bayou.
They're-
Anytime you see Linda Lee and she's up there singing, you want to hear Blue Bayou.
Well, when I started this podcast, I had a female bass player on, Christine Lorraine Morgan, and she played in more modern 80s bands and stuff. And then I knew of only one other bass player who I just interviewed the other day, Patty Williams. Again, played primarily in the 80s. But then I came across
Patty Williams, bass player, female bass player.
Right.
What band she playing? I believe I know.
She played in Ventura. She played in Patty and the Bad Daddies. She played in, like I said, more 80s.
Okay, even when I went to rock and roll oldies, I would
Yeah.
say I was still president of Tri-State Country Bluegrass Association.
Right.
So even all through those years, I was still,
Yep.
still doing my thing.
Yeah, she played in the FX and Ventura, I think, in the 80s, and then in the 90s, Patty and the Bad Daddies. But, I didn't know of Linda Lee, and then I realized by doing some research, she was the real deal. Like, everybody liked her, and she played for a long time in country, right, primarily.
Her personality is unbelievable.
Is it? Yeah.
She's so laid back and so good to get along with. And so was Billy Thunder.
Yeah.
For that, but he had his moments.
I need to get
But
her on the podcast.
she would, she'd keep him calmed down in that. I remember Billy Thunder. It was me, Billy, Linda Lee bass, Louis Nadeau on guitar. He passed away.
Okay, all right.
And
Is Billy still around?
no,
No.
Billy passed a
He did?
number of
Okay.
years ago.
So I know we're kind of into the 80s now.
We're in the 80s, and I went from Country Legend. I was with Country Legend for about 5 years.
Yes.
4 or
okay.
5 years. Good group of guys. And we were one of the top country bands at
Sure,
the time.
I recognize the
but
name.
then you've got the one of my favorite bands was Casey versus Casey at the Orta City Slicker Band,
Yeah.
which was Bill Shealy on drums, one of my best friends.
Great
and
drummer.
there was Bob Casey
Right.
and I believe Dan Freelick
Okay.
on fiddle. Now, like I said, Dan Freelick was playing in Jerry Tubbs' Little with Nashville. That's when I met him, and I was
Right.
playing with him. So I got off the ground with the country, the best in country.
Yeah, you sure did, and you stayed with it.
Yeah, and having all these contacts. And Jim Turner, he had his own band, and Kenny Fetzner, he became one of my best friends. He passed over a year ago.
Where did the Denny James and the Whiskey River Band fit in?
Okay.
Because I saw a
I'm glad you brought
45.
that up. I'm glad you brought that up
Yeah.
because now the memory. When we had our Tri-State Country Music Association, if you saw the 45 on the thing,
Yeah.
they took parts of different bands, the best in bands, 3 different bands, and we want to do
created
this
that.
record, and we want the proceeds to go to Tri-State Country Music Association because it all goes to. So I met Denny James, and he said, "We want you to drummer," and I think Jim Befko, who was in Country Legend with me, was a steel
player.
guitar,
Right.
steel guitar player at the time, and we made this record in the living room of Keith Fischeckel.
Okay, yeah,
who had
sure.
a studio,
Twang Studios,
29th
yeah.
Street, I
Yep,
think
that's
he had
his old
it.
house, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
at
Him
his
and John Mazza.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember the drum set I had, I think I bought for $50. It was so cheap, but boy, they made my drum set sound
good.
Yeah, sound really good.
So this band was just put together for this one
just
record?
for this, so I wasn't with Denny James. He had his own band called Denny James.
Oh, okay.
But he wanted to take different players and I was honored to be asked to do the drums to. So, matter of fact, I think yesterday I have an aide on my bus, Cheryl. I just gave her a record. I says I'm on that.
Well, I saw that record and I was laughing because the two
The
songs.
Hanging Cowboys.
Yeah, that's what I didn't. The Swinging Cowboys or Hanging Meat. What did that mean?
If you saw the cover,
Yeah, you guys got the nooses?
and I had my cowboy hat on. I had a beard.
Gotcha.
That was fun to do. And yeah, that girl, the woman, she was just a model. She wasn't in any of the bands, but she was a model for the
She
picture.
was like the hangman.
Yeah. And on the cover, it told you what the proceeds were going. Tri-State Country Bluegrass Association had our names on it, what instruments we played.
Yeah.
And the two songs on either side was so easy.
Oh, okay. So that's what I was going to say. Gone could mean forever, and
Yes.
Living a Nightmare. Were those originals that?
Those are originals.
That Denny wrote.
Denny wrote.
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
Those were originals.
So that's a collector's item.
Oh, exactly.
What'd they do? Sell those at the jamborees to make money?
I'm not sure, and I don't even remember us getting any proceeds from them or whatever.
Yeah.
I can't remember what happened. After that.
Yeah. All right.
But some of my favorite country bands were, like I said, City Slicker Band. And in the later 80s, they've become really big.
Okay.
With Bill Shilley, Bob Casey,
Right.
Bill Feathers.
Were there new places to play for country?
Well, they were
in the
playing a
80s?
lot was at Best Western.
Okay. All right.
So, there wasn't a whole lot of places for country
That's
bands.
what I wondered. Yeah.
So it was about 84. All right, I wanted to move on from Country Legend, and I can't remember if it was Bob Casey and Sarge I got in that. That didn't last all that long.
Right.
And then someone said, Rick, you got to try out for this band. Remember back then it was Freddie and the Flashbacks was the band.
It was like the oldies band.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they had a huge following.
It did. And back then, oldies was the 50s probably, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The doo-wop type 50s,
Gotcha.
but, and everyone's heard of them.
Absolutely.
And they were breaking apart. Frank Savaggi broke away from them and wanted to start a band called the Classmates.
So there was no Freddie?
No.
Okay, gotcha.
No, it
All
was
right.
just the name of the band. Or
Gotcha,
whatever.
okay. So that's where the Classmates came from.
Right.
Oh.
And it's Frank Savaggi said, I want to start the Classmates. Someone says, Rick, you need to try out for this band. They're just starting. So I said, well, what is it? Well, it's four guys up front singing doo-wop or whatever. It says, oh, man, that's almost like going into a polka band. Do I really?
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah. After playing rock and roll and country and, all right, let me try out for these guys. They sang the four. It was Frank Savaggi, Ron Corsi, Jim Soley, and Larry Hardin. Super, all four of these guys.
Yeah.
And they sang a little bit. Now, I'm no fan of barbershop quartets, but this is the doo-wops or whatever.
Right.
They blew me away.
They did.
The harmonies. And knowing how popular Freddie and the Flashback was, okay, let me try out for them. Because one of them, I can't even remember who it was, called me and said, we want you to try out.
Okay.
All right, how hard can 50s and 60s be? Yeah, should be a walk in the park, right?
Right.
Wrong. I tried out, and I would have failed me. There's beats in there that I just wasn't used to playing, and it may sound simple, on records or whatever. And they said, due to your reputation, and they told me later on, no, you wouldn't have passed.
If it wasn't you, like they knew who you were.
Right.
Yeah.
I said, give me a tape. What songs you want me to learn? Because I learned,
Turn on those big speakers.
Lion
and get on your
Sleeps
drums.
Tonight, and all these other, I'm trying to think of the popular 50 songs at that time. I took it home, studied them. I came back and nailed it.
Wow.
And said, you got the job. I said, okay, Classmates. How popular is this going to be? Our very first job was at Girard Hotel.
Okay. Yep. Just tore down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the place was a dive. I said, are you kidding me? Now, how we're going to dress, we're going to be playing in tuxedos.
Yeah.
And we're going to be changing outfits. All right, like a Vegas act.
Yeah, right.
We're going to change outfits after, in between each play. I says, okay, let me see how many people out there. There's a line.
Oh.
There's people already were anticipating the classmates. I think we played there one time, and then we went to Ramada Inn off I-90, Route 8.
Right, yeah.
And they hired us. And like I said, the line was out the door.
Huh.
And it was exciting. I said, wow, how popular is this? I mean, we got good crowds in the country and that. Because, like I said, my favorite place is Pappy's Place in Wattsburg, Farmer's Tavern. And I think you named a place, was at the Lakewood Bowling Alley. What was it, Nick's?
Yep, that's right, yeah.
Nick's place. Now, Nick was a friend of my father.
Nick Panos.
Yeah,
right,
Nick Panos, because he sponsored his bowling team or whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember Nick
Papa Nick's. Yeah, right.
He says, and he come to me, he says, Rick, I want to hire you guys playing.
Huh.
Okay, yeah, we'll play there. And he put in the paper, Country Legend, featuring Rick Carr on drums.
I have that ad. I saw that, yeah.
And I'm cringing. Oh, no. Please, you didn't do that. At the time, you had Ron Heater, and he got upset with
I
that.
bet, yeah.
And look, it wasn't me.
Yeah, right.
Because Nick knew me from the band.
Right.
And he liked my drum playing at the time in my country days.
Well,
I think drummers can relate to what I'm about ready to say. But was my mother's favorite song was Wipeout.
Oh, yeah.
So I got really known for playing Wipeout. Hate it. It's the most lame, easiest song to play, but,
everybody knows it.
They got to request it every time we play. And Nick Panos is no different.
Right.
So he thinks I'm like and by no stretch of imagination am I the best drummer in Erie. I never looked at myself like that. But because he was so impressed with Wipeout and it said, okay, featuring Rick, I'm nobody.
Yeah.
Nick, no one knows me. They know my brother Danny Carr.
Sure,
but they don't know me.
Well, then the classmates I always think of like a Ramada Inn type of band, like a lounge band. Is that
to me
correct?
they were a Vegas act.
Yeah, like an act.
And at that time, just like you had the Younger Brothers and stuff like that. Well, in the classmates, we've had so many musicians. Bobby Casey came in, Paul Yocklin.
Wow.
This is around 87 or whatever, and Paul Yocklin was friends with Denny Brandell, and he wrote the jingle, and we did the commercial, second Brandell commercial. It was called Step Up the Brandell.
Wow.
Paul Yocklin wrote the jingle. We did it. Took us 8 hours to do the commercial. We were in white overalls. I was holding the hammer or whatever.
Oh, you were in the actual commercial?
Yes.
Oh, I thought you made. Oh, okay. I thought you just did the song over it. Okay, gotcha.
No, they did the song over it, and it was like, there's the classmates, and
wow.
And
Paul
so
Yocklin
I was
sang it.
Well, yeah,
one of the three.
Well, actually,
guys,
the whole
right?
classmates sang the jingle or whatever. Step Up the Brandell.
Interesting.
And was that? Yeah, so I got to do a TV commercial. That was probably in the late 80s.
There you go.
And some of the gigs we played with the classmates, and we had many musicians. The beginning of Classmates was Ruth Ann Scanzillo on keyboards. Very talented.
Yeah.
And she's still talented to this day. And our guitar player is Paul Tater. There's only 3 of us musicians. The band part, we're background, really. This act is the 4 guys up front.
So just drums, keys, and guitar?
Guitar.
And that was it. Oh, I didn't realize
and Ruth Ann dubbed with the bass on her keyboard. Sure. And Paul Tater was a guitar player. Huh. And memorable gigs with the classmates would be, remember, Three River Stadium.
What?
And I think Scott Campbell played guitar with us at that time. Okay. I think Bobby Casey, we played at the club in Three River Stadium for, I don't even know what event.
Okay.
But it was the night before they were set up for the Steelers. And I'm like in awe looking out. Says,
sure.
Wow. You had to take an elevator, to get up there to play.
Right.
It might have been a wedding or
Three Rivers.
something like that.
That's cool.
But that's a memorable gig.
But this is with the classmates. You're in the 80s or 90s.
Yes.
Or 80s,
No, we're
right?
in the
still
80s.
Right. 80 to 91 you play in the classmates, which is a long run.
Yeah, and the top four that started out in the classmates, Ron Corsi, Jim Soley, Frank Savaggi, and Larry Hardin had a falling out partway through in the 80s. So Jim Soley and Larry Hardin dropped out. Frank Savaggi and Ron Corsi stayed, and I stayed with the classmates, and we were going through musician after musician, and a who's who of musicians. I'm not sure if you even interview them yet, or
and singers
or will
too.
be. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, singers too, which was Bob Casey, Paul Yocklin, Frank Savaggi. We had Dan Flau playing keyboards at one point. I remember they said, we're going to have 2 keyboard players and you're going to play drums. I said, what? Tim Wickham and Tom Martin.
Okay.
And then I played drums. What a full sound. Tim Wickham is unbelievable. Then later on, Tim Roach.
Oh, wow.
There's a monster keyboard player.
He was great. I loved him.
He came in. So at one point it was Tim Wickham, Tim Roach, and myself. And
I always think of Tim Roach more like Deep Purple and, heavy classic rock stuff.
Well, you had one of the keyboard players putting horns in there. The other one playing, and they had the bass. They were able to cover the bass, and I felt like I was playing in a 20-piece orchestra. I remember playing Erie Days right before the Singing Sergeants, Air Force Singing Sergeants.
Right. Yeah.
Dave Wadsworth, who became a classmate after he retired.
Yeah.
That's another story on it. But I remember going on before the Singing Sergeants. They had the whole Air Force band, and we sound fuller than them.
Really?
With Tim Roach and Tim Wickham.
Did those guys have like big organs? They have B3s on stage with a Leslie's and everything.
Tim Roach had the whole thing.
That's what I figured, because
just
Tim
like he was
everywhere.
in Joe Rockhead.
Exactly, like he had in Joe Rockhead.
Yes.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
And oh my God.
Yeah. I mean,
and
he
what
was
a
master
super guy.
at that. Yeah, great.
What a super guy.
Yep.
And being able to say I'm playing with these guys, these are monster musicians.
They all were.
I was just honored to play with any of them.
So you keep playing with those guys for a while. How does the upperclassmen evolve?
Okay.
Is that
now we're going to go into?
Am I correct? And is that the next evolution?
I'm going to tell you how that started there. I started that band.
Okay. All right.
We were playing in the classmates all through the 80s and stuff like that, and the band was paid by salary. What I mean by salary is we were playing in Warren, PA, and playing, and no matter where we played, we were getting $50.
$50 a guy.
Yeah, that's why we gone through so many musicians in that.
And you're playing.
But we didn't know how much, Frank Savaggi and them were the ones taking care of the money at that time.
Gotcha.
And after a while, I said, well, wait a minute. I helped start the classmates. I was right in the ground floor. How did I become a salary? No one knew what the other was getting paid.
Oh, interesting.
And I talked to Dave Walker, was our guitar player at the time, and I talked to some of the others. I said, look, I will not leave classmates hanging. I love that band. I love those guys. So in September, I got my upperclassmen together, Pontillo brothers.
Yeah.
Patsy Pontillo, Tom Pontillo, and Ralph Pontillo.
Right.
This is going to be an 8-piece band. Classmates wanted to make more money, so we didn't have a bass player. And to me, that was all about the money. And that says, I wanted to start a band. It's going to be an 8-piece band. We're going to have a bass player, guitar player, keyboard player.
Deal.
Yep.
Yeah.
And with the Pontillos up front, and we're going to play music. Like at the time, Reds was pretty big. And I liked some of the music. Reds was Mike Redcliffe.
Was it the same style of music?
Same style.
Okay.
We still played the oldies and stuff like that. But these guys, and the Pontillo brothers, to me, reminded me like the Casey brothers. They had that kind of harmony and that kind of...
and I didn't know that they play. I obviously know who Ralph Pontillo was and everything.
And
now,
at the time, Ralph was just getting a job as president of Manufacturers Association. Okay. He wanted to be like low key, because they didn't want their president.
Sure, right.
Obviously, they looked like musicians were just help.
Right. Had they played in other bands before? The Pontillo
They might have.
brothers?
I think Tom Pontillo sang
Okay, I didn't
in
know.
other bands.
And I apologize to the Pontillo brothers that are
but
listening.
Patsy, Pontillo, they all had voices, and believe it or not, Ralph had a pretty good voice.
That's great.
All three of them could sing. It was like having 4 bands in one.
Wow.
And I think Dave Walker, with Pat Lipinski was playing bass. Rob Heiche was I think at one point was our guitar player, and Dan Flau, and we had a song. We played rock and roll. Classmates were playing rock and roll. Now, in September, I sat down with Frank and his wife, and I said, "We're going to start a new band, and we want to move on.
Yeah,
but we're not going to do this until after the first year. I think was 91 or somewhere. We're going to give you a 3-month notice.
Okay,
because we're not trying to bury the classmates.
Yep.
They
continue
to do
on,
right. And Angie, that owned Rock and Roll, hired us classmates, and we just took off from there for 2 years. I mean, I consider them one of the best bands I played with in my playing career, along with the Graduates. I don't want to shortchange Graduates, because that's a whole different story there. The one guy that's been with me through the Classmates and the Graduates is Dave Dennison.
Okay, all right.
We can say we've been together for 17 years.
And you guys were playing how often? In a
month.
My
God.
A month.
A weekend. We did
every weekend.
Yeah. New Year's Eve. I remember playing New Year's Eve in Germany, Baumholder, Germany, from I think 74, and I played every single New Year's Eve. Never was out of a job until my stroke in 2000.
Gotcha. Right. Wow.
So
that's a string. Yeah.
Yes. For whatever bands for here and there.
Right.
But the upperclassmen, we lasted 2 years, and that was good. And they just recently, 10 years ago, had an upperclassmen reunion at Rainbow Gardens, filled the place.
Oh, okay. All right.
Which, of course, I couldn't play.
So, but they played together for 2 years, like you said, the upperclassmen, and then you mentioned the Graduates, which played for 7 years, right? I mean, 93 to 2000?
Now, we went from the Classmates to upperclassmen. Now we're time to graduate.
Yeah.
And called the Graduates.
Same style of music?
Yes. Started in about 92, 93, and played well after I had my stroke in the 2000s.
Did you start that band too, the Graduates?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd say me and Dave Dennison.
So you realize, okay, there's something to this type of music. People are coming out to see you on a regular basis. There's a market.
It's a huge market for like I said, once I got used to playing in the Classmates and that. I mean, the crowds that would just come. We were packing no matter where we played.
Yeah, and
we played a couple. There was a CEO of Erie Insurance. He ended up dying. He had, I forget what it was, but he hired us for a big gig. I think it was at Civic Center was built. We had Reds set up on one side, the Classmates set up on the other side.
Yeah.
And that was memorable.
Wow, I bet.
One of my favorite bands was Reds.
Yeah, what was your deal with Reds? Did you work with them or?
After I had my stroke in 2000, I couldn't play anymore. I was still doing Harborfest, and I called Mike Redcliffe up.
Okay.
There's a singer that, to me, no one could beat him, bar none.
And were they the same style of music? I mean, I always heard of Reds. Was it like an oldies type of band, or?
I wouldn't call them, no. Oldies. They had a Motown sound you wouldn't believe.
Right.
They used to play at Mugs, and they'd be like the Classmates, there'd be a line out the door.
Mugs, that was the name of the lounge. Where was that?
Off of I-90, 97, called Blackjacks now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's it. Right.
I believe it.
Knew there was another place.
And they would pack the joint. You had Gary Birdie and Mike Redcliffe and Bill Shealy was playing that band. I always envied Bill Shealy. He always seems to be at the right place at the right time. He's getting bands I'm envying playing because of the music they were playing.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, you're playing in some pretty popular, successful bands. But
yes, I was. Yeah. But the music they were playing is, I loved. And they were like a Las Vegas show.
They were.
Mike Redcliffe, who was tried out for Spiral Staircase back in the late 60s, early 70s. 100 people were trying out in Philadelphia. He got the job. So for a couple of years, he was the lead singer of Spiral Staircase.
I didn't know that. Okay, all right.
his voice, and he still has that voice to this day.
Yeah.
When I said, Mike, you have to get, he didn't have the band together. I said, I need you to get the band. I need a headliner for Harborfest. He says, okay, Rick, I'll do this under one condition. You manage us. Right. Okay, I never thought about managing. This should be, I should have no problem selling this.
Yeah, right.
So they got together, and that was the third version of Reds.
Oh, so they stayed together then. It wasn't just like a
No, there
Harborfest
was some
gig.
different players.
Yeah.
Dan Flau was our keyboard player
Okay.
in Reds, and we got a female singer, Karen Denning.
Okay.
What a voice! Oh my God, she just melted hearts, and the applause she was getting, and to me, Mike Redcliffe, probably the best male singer. You know, he's been doing it so long. He puts his heart and soul when he will not go out of the basement unless this band is really ready.
Super tight.
So
Right.
practices will last months before we even go out.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Well, which reminds me, get back to John Ferraro.
Yeah. Yeah. Bring us back.
All right, his band was playing at Anthony's 5th and State.
Okay.
My brother, Danny, was the bouncer there.
Okay.
Someone was going to, they were harassing Johnny.
Okay.
And Danny stepped in, you can't do that.
Right.
Those two became friends. My brother was creating American Gladiators at the time.
Okay. I wondered if you had done anything with Danny as a drummer for any of his stuff that he was, events or anything like that. But
Yes, man,
yeah.
I'm glad you just reminded me.
Yeah.
Tri-State Country Bluegrass Association in 1980. He was just getting the Lower East Side Sports Center together, and they wanted to purchase a ring, boxing ring.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I said, Dan, we'll raise money for that. I said, I could probably raise $2,000. So St. Boniface, I had 10 bands, and it was for the Lower East Side Sports Center.
Yeah.
And we raised $2,000 that day.
It's a lot back
And
then.
yeah, I did that for him. And also he hired years later for Donnie Polanski's wedding, Donnie and Mary.
Okay.
The upperclassmen.
The upperclassmen.
We in '92 we played at Perry Highway Hose for Donnie and
Oh, yeah.
and that was Danny's gift to them.
Well, this has been great. All right. Well, I'd say thanks for coming on today, Ricky. I appreciate it, and I'm
Thank
glad
you for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad we covered a lot, you know. And like I said, you're one of the first country, and I haven't had anybody that played in bands like, you know, the Graduates and you know, the Upperclassmen and all those types of oldie types of bands. But you played so much, you know, and those types of bands. Everybody always thinks of, oh, I played in a heavy metal band or I played in a rock band, you know, but those types of bands played a lot back then.
And playing rock and country and stuff like that gave me so many connections. That's
Absolutely.
what makes my events. And I forgot to mention the last event I had, Jim Turner, big in country back then, died last year.
Okay.
And Terry Graham called me up and says, Rick, can you come out of retirement and do a gig for
Like a
Jim,
benefit?
well, of course, for Jim Turner would do a benefit for anyone. He's done so many.
Yeah,
and
right.
he was one of my best friends. Like I said, he was the vote that got me in the
That's
Tri-State.
right.
So I said, let me make a couple phone calls. Got about 4 bands together, and I got 3 country bands, and Greyhounds were going to do it, but someone got sick at the last minute, so I called up the Jays, which is my connection with the
Fantastic
classmates,
band.
or Dave Dennison.
Yeah.
Doug Yako was our singer in the Graduates.
Right,
So
right.
those two, and John, the drummer, who used to play with McMillan in Life.
Yep. I know John.
Those 3
Yeah.
have, and what an act they have.
They're great.
So I
Yeah.
said, could you guys do this gig with me in October for Jim Turner? And they don't know country and stuff like that.
Right.
So I said, no, do your thing.
They're an oldies band for sure. Yeah, right. Yeah.
He blew them away.
That's awesome.
They were so. I remember the Rudler brothers, very good friends of mine.
Yeah.
There's some talented
Oh,
people
yeah,
right there.
absolutely.
Ron Rudler,
Ron's a
the
great-
old coach
great guy.
from.
Yep.
Yeah, we go back from that. So
Yep.
my connections from both, I was able to put this together. I think we raised $15,000.
That's what I was going to ask you. Well, this is awesome. Then we'll just keep in touch, and you can let me know of any other events that you're putting together, and I can tell the folks on the podcast about it.
Well, and I also can give you some names that wouldn't be bad in interviewing
That's
on
awesome.
the who's who was in the 60s, 70s, and 80s music scene.
We will chat after this. Thanks
All right.
a lot. Cool, man. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
All
I
right.
enjoyed it.
That's great. Hey, that's it for this episode. Please rate and subscribe to this podcast on whatever podcast app you use. That really helps me out a lot. I want to remind you to check out Jack Stevenson's Two-Man Happy Hour podcast. It's only about 5-10 minutes long, and it's where Jack tells you what bands are playing and where every week. So check that out. Jack does a great job of getting out there and supporting the local music scene. It's twomanhappyhour.com. Also, as usual, a big thank you to our sponsor, the JPT Foundation. They have that awesome bingo hall on West 38th Street that is available for rent, and that's where we hosted our first music night last month, and we're going to do that again this month on March 29th, again from 6 to 9. That's a Tuesday. And again, the local band, the Fabulous Leftovers, will play some new music for us from 6 to 7, and then after that, we'll open it up to an open mic. Thanks to my Patreon supporters, Mike and Marie Miller, Matt Filippi, Mark and Janice Nelson, Ed Pouton, Ted Gokal. If you want to help support this podcast, go to patreon.com. That's patreon.com, and just search for the Erie Music History Podcast. All right, that's it. I'm Chip Schill. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.